NBA All-Star festivities going down this weekend. Who do you guys got? Skills contest, dunk contest, three-point contest, West versus the East. Find out in the next edition of Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome to Sideline Sports Podcast. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Sideline Sports Podcast. I'm the host, Alex Naveca, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of your SoCal sports news. Today, we have a good colleague of mine, good friend of mine as well, a play-by-play broadcaster. You guys will see him in an ESPN broadcast near you. His name is Chris Sylvester. Chris, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on, man.
Oh, it's always awesome to hop on with you. I appreciate you keeping me in mind to have these conversations. I know you've had a lot of great guests on the show since you got going, and I'm a subscriber. So if you're listening out there, I suggest you subscribe as well.
Thank you, Chris. Always appreciate the support from you there. But before we talk about all of these NBA festivities, I know you've got a lot to say. This episode of Sideline Sports Podcast was brought to you by Manscaped. Who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming? Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you with the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by 2 million men worldwide. We have an exclusive offer for all of my listeners, my viewers, subscribers, 20% off plus free shipping. You get both of them, with the promo code Sideline20 at manscaped.com. I received the Performance Package 3.0 with this travel case here. Comes with the charger, along with the Lawnmower 3.0, along with these 2 sprays and the deodorant. Also comes with a pair of boxer briefs, folks. Can't beat the deal there. Make sure, get 20% off with Sideline 20 as the promo code plus free shipping. But let's get started, Chris. We've got a lot to talk over with the NBA All-Star Game. Let's first talk about that skills challenge. We've got ourselves a plethora of talent there for the skills challenge. What are you thinking right now for the skills challenge?
Well, my guy, the defending skills challenge champion, Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat, is not going to be in it, which means we're going to have a new champion this year. And you take a look at some of the names in there. It's interesting because when you look back at who's won this competition in the last 10 years, there's not consistency in it being a guard or a forward. Now, obviously, the NBA has changed a lot, and forwards and centers, and there was a big Twitter debate between Candace Parker and Shaquille O'Neal on TNT last night, talking about modern day pick and roll with big guys like Nikola Jokic that can step out, shoot the three, and also score in low against you. You look at when the skills challenge started for 2003 to 2014, 15. You're looking at all guards, Jason Kidd, Baron Davis, Steve Nash, Dwayne Wade, Tony Parker, Stephen Curry, amongst others. But you look at the skills challenge champions the last 5 years, Karl Anthony Towns, Kristaps Porzingis, Bam Adebayo last year. So it's interesting to see what this competition has become over the years. And with the guys that you have in it, you have versatile big men this year. You got Julius Randle, who, of course, Laker fans all remember, and he's blossomed into a good player. He's an all-star for the first time in his career this year. You also got Luka Doncic, Nikola Vucevic, Domantas Sabonis, and then you got Chris Paul in there and Robert Covington of the Portland Trail Blazers. So it's an interesting field. Obviously, Chris Paul, it's interesting to see him competing in a competition like this, this late into his career. It's a lot of young guys in there, guys that haven't been able to participate in them before. So it's an interesting field. Obviously, I think Luka Doncic would have to be the favorite because the skills challenge is all about versatility, and that guy seems to stuff the stat sheet pretty much every time he plays. But I also wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Julius Randle or Domantas Sabonis, a skilled forward that can do a lot of things, pass and score and rebound and get up and down the floor quickly. It's fun. It doesn't grab the headlines like the 3-point challenge or the dunk contest, but the skills challenge has an interesting field this year. And I think just kind of what I talked about with the history of the skills challenge, going back to the first year they had it back in 2003, I think it just, when you look at the names of the winners, it just kind of tells the story of how much the game of basketball has changed in the NBA over the last 5-10 years.
Well said, Chris. Definitely well said. The skills challenge definitely has a lot of great guys that are going to be competing for that one spot. You mentioned Julius Randle, that being his first one. Going to be interesting to see how he fares in his first time in a skills challenge. And then you talked about Luka, and this guy is just a baller in all facets of the game. Great shooter, great ball handler, and he sees the court very well, and going to be interesting. I think Luka will be my pick also for the favorite in that one. But of course, you can't sleep on Chris Paul. I mean, Chris Paul is another guy that still he can still hoop. He's still got game on him. But you can't sleep on Sabonis and also with Vucevic. So just all the guys that are going to be competing in that skills challenge. It's a tough decision. It's going to be really tough. It's going to be one of those interesting events to watch for sure.
Yeah, and for those of you out there that aren't that familiar with the skills challenge, that's where they try and deliver that chest pass in between that small tight circle, and it involves a lot of running around, accurate passing, agility. It's interesting, man. It's not for everybody, but I'm interested to see how it goes. But I'd imagine that Luka Doncic is the favorite there, and for a competition like that, I think if we're making predictions, I'd probably have to go with Luka, who I really do think is the future face of the NBA whenever LeBron declines, which might be never.
That guy will always find a reason to come back onto the court. Now, let's talk about that three-point competition. That's actually a favorite. A lot of people do like to watch that three-point contest. It's still, a debate if it's better than the dunk contest. A lot of people like to watch that one, but that three-point contest. Wow, if we talked about that skills contest, have a lot of heavy hitters, that three-point contest has a lot of favorites as well.
It does, and when you look at the competitions this year in the NBA, you're looking at a lot of guys who are capable of winning, and some guys that have won in the past. I mean, this has to be one of the most loaded, three-point competition fields that we've had as far as star power goes. With Devin Booker, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, a couple of teammates there, Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, Steph Curry, the three-time MVP, Zach LaVine. If you're not following with the former UCLA Bruin, I mean, Zach LaVine's been insane this year with the Chicago Bulls. So, Steph Curry, he's perhaps the greatest three-point shooter that the NBA's ever seen. And it'd be hard to pick against him. But I will say this, Devin Booker is more of a catch and shoot guy. He can obviously create his own shot. Steph Curry can catch and shoot as well. But with the way that the three-point competition is, with kind of having to set your feet, grab the ball and let it go, 5 times from the corners, 5 times from the wings, and 5 times from the top of the arc. I think the competition maybe suits somebody like Devin Booker a little bit better, but it's always a lot of fun to watch the three-point contest. And I think this year, as far as names go, all-star appearances, future Hall of Famers, this has to be one of the more loaded fields that we've had in recent memory.
All the guys that are going to be competing for that three-point contest will make a serious case for that Hall of Fame, big names to make it to the Hall of Fame. I mean, we can easily say that Steph Curry is probably going to be that winner for that three-point contest, but he doesn't have an easy task to have a face-off against Devin Booker like you talked about. I still think maybe the two Celtics on there too, to add Tatum and Brown for the three-point contest. Those two guys they're reckless they're ruthless, I should say, when it comes down to shooting from behind the arc. So I think Curry he's not going to win it as easy. I think he's going to have a tough time, definitely, to have to beat out some of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's one aspect that's made the NBA so intriguing this year, among other things, I think it's the resurgence of Steph Curry. He never fell off, but in the season last year without Kevin Durant, and obviously they had lost the finals in Durant's final season with the injury that he suffered against the Toronto Raptors. I think we all kind of weren't sure what Steph Curry we were going to get this season. Were we going to get a Steph Curry that's on the decline, and he'll go for big nights every now and again? But I think what we've seen out of Steph Curry, with probably with all due respect to guys like Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins, this is probably the worst roster, with Klay Thompson down, the worst roster that Steph Curry in his prime has had to deal with in Golden State. And if there wasn't that possibility of Klay Thompson coming back as a prolific scorer, obviously maybe the Warriors would think about blowing things up there and rebuilding. But with all the success they've had with Steph Curry and all the success that he's had in that uniform, it'd be kind of hard to see him playing somewhere else one day. But man, I think Steph Curry, while many weren't surprised, quite honestly, I was a bit skeptical of how good he would actually be this year. And he is definitely solved any type of doubts that I've had about where he's at in his career. And like we've seen with LeBron James and not too many other guys, hopefully Steph can stay healthy. I know he was dealing with some injuries last season. And remember, the Warriors were not in the bubble. That's how bad they were last year. So Steph got a lot of time off, and he just looks like a guy that is rejuvenated and ready to kind of prove some people wrong. Obviously, the Warriors aren't gonna win the finals and might not even make the playoffs this year. But I think what Steph Curry's been able to do this season kind of cements his legacy as just one of the better players of this generation, no doubt. But you can't overlook those MVPs and those championships, even if he hasn't quite got that Finals MVP under his belt yet.
He's definitely proved a lot of us wrong, and surprising to see how well the Warriors have even been able to hang on to that top 8 spot in the Western Conference, to be able to stay in that mix, considering how competitive the Warriors have become. Even without having Thompson, they've still found their way to be able to compete in that Western Conference, and we'll have to wait and see what that second half has to offer. But let's go ahead and take a quick break, Chris. When we come back, let's go ahead and talk about that dunk contest and what that West versus East looks like. Where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. We'll be back.
Hi, my name's Stephen Leonardi. I'm the commissioner of the Major League Baseball Fan Association, and you are watching the Sideline Sports Podcast.
And we welcome you all back to the second half of Sideline Sports Podcast. Again, I'm the host, Alex Naveca, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, a source of your SoCal sports news. And again, with me today is a play-by-play broadcaster broadcasting at an ESPN near you, Chris Sylvester. First half, we were talking about the skills contest and about the talent and how the game has absolutely changed and the position players that have now taken position, to the three-point competition on how tough the competition this year is with Steph Curry, with Jaylen Brown, with Tatum, and also we didn't talk about much about Mitchell, but another player that you can't sleep on in that three-point competition. Now, let's talk about a fan favorite about the dunk contest. We don't have very many competitors this year, but Chris, What are your thoughts about the talent this year?
Yeah, the dunk contest has honestly, and while I've enjoyed them in the last decade, it just isn't what it was when, Vince Carter and Michael Jordan and the biggest stars in the game were in the dunk contest. I think we have longed to see, guys like LeBron James and, when healthy, Kevin Durant, and some of the game's biggest stars, kind of like we have this year in the 3-point challenge. I think we're kind of waiting for, a year like that where we're really going to have not just necessarily the best dunkers in the NBA, because, the best dunkers in the NBA don't always mean, the best players. Last year's champion, Derrick Jones Jr., he's a decent role player, but he's not close to an all-star, with all due respect to him. And Aaron Gordon, same thing. And, even going back to, the days where Blake Griffin was starring in the dunk contest, I think it was a better product then. That being said, it still seems to grab a lot of headlines, and you only got 3 guys doing it this year, and Anthony Simmons of the Blazers, Cassius Stanley, young guy at Michigan State for the Pacers, and then Obi Toppin, lottery pick last year for the Knicks. It is a slim field, and I think and with all due respect to those guys, and for all we know, Obi Toppin can become an all-star by the time it's all said and done. He's a really young, promising player. Obi Toppin was the college basketball player of the year last year at Dayton. So he's a heck of a player, and I really liked him, and I really liked that pick that New York, took on him in the draft. That being said, I'm not so sure about how the dunk contest will go this year. Let's be honest. I give you those 3 names. How many NBA fans know who all of those guys are and what their stories are? Those guys hardly play, some of them, on their teams, and those aren't NBA championship contending teams. So it's a little disappointing seeing the field. I'm not saying that those guys aren't really talented dunkers, but I'd like to get the dunk contest back to where you have the big names and the biggest names in the game competing in it. Obviously, you understand why some guys don't want to do it, but we gotta get the dunk contest back to what it was. And I think you look at Major League Baseball, you look at the home run derby and how the best and biggest hitters would always be in that year after year, 10, 20 years ago. And it's not necessarily the case in today's game. And so hopefully we can, in the future, in a more normal time, get some bigger names in the dunk contest. But I'm intrigued by some of those guys. I know they're really athletic and good dunkers, and I'm sure they're going to put on a good show. I just would like to see in the future maybe some bigger names participate in that.
Right. There has been a lot of a change. You did forget one big name, though, Chris. You forgot about Kobe. You forgot about that Kobe, that dunk right in between the legs. And when he was in the dunk contest, that guy, man, you can never forget Kobe in the dunk contest.
I think we all wanted to see, a LeBron Kobe final, and it's so disappointing that we never got to see those two match up, on the championship stage. It's like Kobe's great Lakers run with, Pau Gasol and Lamar Odom and Metta World Peace ended right as, the big 3 in Miami formed. So we always miss that. And I think another thing we look back at and we wish we got a little bit more of with the LeBron Kobe rivalry when they were, in the league at the same time and towards the top of their games. I think we would have liked to see those guys match up in the dunk contest at one point. Unfortunately, that never happened. And, hopefully, it's motivation for today's stars to participate in something like that, so they don't look back and wonder what if.
The only way that Kobe and LeBron ever played against each other were definitely on those Christmas days. Those were the fun games to watch. Young LeBron and him and Kobe going back and forth, Kobe defending LeBron and vice versa, LeBron defending Kobe. Just both of those amazing players just going off on Christmas Day. Would have been nice to see Cavaliers versus Lakers, or even Lakers versus the Heat when that big 3 developed. But that dunk contest, like you were talking about, we need to get some of these big name guys to be back into it, because LeBron can still dunk. Like he's come out with some pretty good dunks from long distance. Like you talked about, a Kevin Durant as well. Durant's got that length. He's got that athleticism. We got to see more of those guys that are athletic, the big name guys that can really headline this dunk contest and really attract more attention to it. Nothing against the guys that are participating now, but you're right. We do need to see more of these guys do the dunk contest and just try to show these youngsters, hey, this is how we do it. This is how we get it done.
Absolutely. And I think maybe in a non-pandemic season that maybe that would be a possibility. But unfortunately, you know, and we'll bridge this into, you know, the next thing we talk about. But, you know, there hasn't been the best buzz and support from the players surrounding this All-Star game. You understand why the NBA is doing it. At the end of the day, it's a business, and All-Star Weekend brings in a lot of money. But this wasn't originally in the plans. There wasn't supposed to be an All-Star game. There was supposed to be a break for everybody. And I think after such a short off season, everybody was looking forward, players and coaches and their families looking forward to that little, you know, 5-6 day break where they get to just spend some time at home and kick back, relax a little bit before, you know, getting into the second half of the season. So, you know, hopefully in the future, we'll see some bigger names. Of the three guys participating, just because I've seen him a little bit more than the other two, I'm going to give the edge to Obi Toppin. I mean, he's a great dunker. He's thrown down some great ones with the Knicks and in college at Dayton. I'll give him the edge, but I'm interested to see what the other guys can bring to the table.
Dunk contest, always an interesting one to watch. That one's going to be going on in halftime in the middle of the big game. And without further ado, West versus the East. But before we even talk about this team and talk about the East, the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference stars, Chris, I know you feel very strongly about this game, about the All-Star game. You talked a little bit about that. I'll go ahead and let you elaborate on your thoughts on the All-Star game this year.
Yeah, you know, when you think NBA and you think the biggest stars in the game, you think about LeBron James. You think about Giannis Antetokounmpo, the back-to-back MVP of the league, right? Some people were touting him last year as the new face of basketball until LeBron went on to win another championship and Giannis couldn't get out of the second round. That being said, those two guys publicly to the media ripped the NBA for even holding an All-Star game this year. And while the league is going to make more money having an All-Star game versus not having an All-Star game, what type of message does that send to the fans when LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo, two of the biggest and best names in the game, two future Hall of Famer, two consistent All-Stars, two guys on teams that are championship contenders, what type of message does that send to NBA fans when their favorite players and the faces of the game aren't supporting the All-Star game? It's a little backwards. Now, are both guys going to participate in the game? Yes, because for the fans, that they're going to do that. They're not going to take that experience away from anybody that might be able to make it into the building or those that are anxious to watch it on TV. That being said, I mean, you look at the timing of this game coming up on Sunday. It's like we're on the cusp of March Madness, which we haven't had for 2 years. We've got the start of Major League Baseball. You're in the middle of hockey season. You have some spring college football. There's not a burning need to have an All-Star game this year from a fan perspective. And while the 3-point challenge is pretty loaded with big names, and obviously the All-Star game was probably the best it's ever been with the format they had last year, you're just not getting the support of the players. And if you're not getting the support of the players who are out there, I mean, what am I going to think about when I'm watching LeBron run up and down the floor and Giannis run up and down the floor on Sunday? Those guys don't want to be there. They've told publicly that they don't want to be there. So it's interesting. I think a lot of arguments are, well, it's not safe to have the All-Star game. I think the NBA has done a great job of keeping their players safe during this pandemic for the most part. I mean, they had the genius bubble idea. I think Adam Silver, among the 4 major sports in America. I think he's the best commissioner. He's the most progressive commissioner. He's the smartest commissioner. A slight blemish is having an all-star game. And another thing that I alluded to a few moments ago was that these players, after like a 2-month off season, at least the ones that went deep in the playoffs in the bubble, they were really looking forward to having this time off and kind of recharging the batteries for the second half of the season. So, I'm not saying that, I'm upset that the All-Star game's happening by any means. It's something that if I'm around the television, I'm probably going to watch. That being said, when the two of the biggest stars in the game come out and publicly say, I don't want to do this, and the NBA still goes on with it anyway, I don't think it's the best look. And, we'll see how it goes on Sunday. I hope it goes well. I'm a fan of the NBA. The more games, the better. The more content, the better. I mean, you and I are broadcasters. More content means more work for guys like us. But I just don't think that it's a good idea when you're not getting the support from the guys that are going to be playing in the game.
No doubt, Chris. These are the two biggest names in the Eastern Conference and in the Western Conference. These guys were completely against the idea. I think the league should have compromised about it. They should have talked about it with big guys like this, and maybe even ownership from teams, and get different perspectives and get different ideas because of that short rest that these teams had, especially if you're the Miami Heat, which you're very familiar with, and the Lakers. They just finished playing the NBA Finals just a couple of months ago. They didn't get a full off season. And like you mentioned it, this is a great time for the players to rest and to not have to work even more, because that second half of the season is going to be an even bigger grind than that first half, because now you have to try to secure a spot in the playoff position. And a lot of these players, they're pushing their way to either a playoff spot or keeping a playoff spot, or third, trying to climb up to the rankings and the standings in their respective conferences. So it's just the fact that these players are going to still play, even though they've come out and said that they're not the biggest fan of it. It's going to be tough to even watch it as a fan, knowing that that's going to be a tough game to even take in, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I think that's my biggest concern. I mean, is it honestly the NBA All-Star game prior to last year, it was kind of a snoozer, man. Nobody plays defense, and usually the games aren't all that close towards the end. But with the format they had last year, it was really entertaining, and they did a good job with it. And it sounds like it's going to be very similar, if not the same thing as last year's All-Star game, which could create for a very entertaining finish. I'm not saying that come the end of the weekend we're going to be sitting back and saying the same thing we are today. But like we mentioned, man, I mean, when LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo, two of the game's biggest stars, are coming out and telling everybody and saying it for everybody to hear, I don't want to do this. This is BS. I don't like it. I think LeBron even used some foul language when he was asked about the All-Star game. He was not happy about it. Neither was Giannis. He echoed that statement. A bunch of other All-Stars did too. It's been a crazy grind for these NBA guys. I mean, think about the guys that were in the bubble for so long, away from their families for all that time. And, 2 months later to have to get back on the grind. And like we said, a lot of these guys were really looking forward to this downtime in the middle of the season, but it's not going to happen. And, so on and so forth. Hopefully it is a good weekend for everybody involved. And hopefully, LeBron and Giannis are able to enjoy themselves despite, not being home where I'm sure they'd like to be.
At least they'll be able to enjoy it with some other talent from their respective conference. And you know what? We're talking about this All-Star game. I got to say, both of these conferences, as always, every year stacked. I mean, we'll start with the Eastern Conference starters right now. They have the captain being KD, Kevin Durant, and then Giannis being one of the starters, Bradley Beal, Joel Embiid, Kyrie, and Jason Tatum. And then over in the Western Conference, they have LeBron being the captain and also a starter along with KD. He's the starter for his conference. They have Steph Curry. They have Luka. They have Nikola Jokic, and they also have Kawhi as a starter there. And just looking at those starters, it already looks stacked, already looks loaded, and it's just going to be fun seeing these two conferences, the starters, duke it out. But nothing against the reserves, but even the reserves, they're loaded with the best in the game.
They are, and I think it's a bit of a strange year. You've had some of the game stars, either out with injury, like Anthony Davis, or had a guy like Jimmy Butler, who was out for a month with COVID protocols and whatnot. So it's an odd way, any way you look at it. I think you and I are into college basketball. We follow college basketball, and you just see how strange it is when there's an uneven number of games. Like your alma mater, for example, Long Beach State, their basketball team, they've only played 12, 13 games this year. And you've got some other teams that have played close to 25, 30 games this year. So it's a strange year. And the NFL, they didn't have a Pro Bowl, right? I mean, Major League Baseball, they didn't have an all-star game in their shortened season. And so it is a little bit interesting to see what the NBA is doing. And, nothing but love, man. Pulling for them. I hope it works out for them. But, we'll see how good of a product it is Sunday night.
Right. We can only be able to tell as soon as the stage is set, the game starts, and once they take the court, hopefully they feel much better. They feel much different once they're on the court and just playing the sport that they love. Chris, what are your predictions as far as the matchup?
Well, when I take a look at these teams, man, it's just whoever feels like playing, 1% defense more than the other team. We just had a lot of the insiders like, Shams leak some information about the upcoming All-Star game. And it's not the traditional East versus West. It's Team LeBron versus Team Kevin Durant. LeBron, picked Giannis on his team first, and I think they're still announcing him. Hard to pick against Team LeBron, man. I mean, as much as that guy's lost in the finals in his career, more recently he's done a lot of winning, and he's consistently on really good teams. I mean, he's always in the finals, right? And it seems that way. And so, I'm going to give the slight edge to Team LeBron. He picked Giannis first. KD, he's been up and down this year because of some injuries and COVID protocols. So I'm going to give the edge to Team LeBron. But, who knows? I mean, if he doesn't want to be there, Giannis doesn't want to be there. They're on the same team. Maybe the other guys win.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be Team LeBron too. I mean, they're pretty stacked. They're pretty loaded with a lot of the talent and stuff. And LeBron, I mean, looks like he did his homework as far as who is going to be the better team. I mean, come on. I mean, look at the reserves as far as with Dame, with Donovan Mitchell, with just some of the best guys in the game. And then also with Zion Williamson, that's a youngster that's going to be having a bright future ahead of him. So that Team LeBron looks pretty good. But like you mentioned before, going into it and just not having that want to play and be on the court at that moment, going to be interesting to see.
It'll be interesting to see for sure. And there's officially the Bron and Giannis playing together in LA rumors. Those are dead with Giannis signing that extension. So maybe people can avoid photoshopping guys in the other jerseys on Sunday.
Absolutely, Chris. But All-Star game festivities all going down on Sunday. It looks like TNT will be streaming that game for you guys. So make sure to tune into that one and make sure to see what's going down on all four of those events. But that's all the time we have left on Sideline Sports Podcast. We thank you all so much for tuning into this one. If you guys like this episode, please give the episode a thumbs up. It really does help out the channel. It really does help the growth and be able to get guests like Chris Sylvester. And also hit the subscription button down below as well. That also helps the channel grow as well. And we're trying to reach 300 subscribers by the end of this year. So we appreciate every single one of you guys is supporting the podcast. And of course, thank you so much to a good friend of mine in the broadcasting business, Chris Sylvester, play-by-play broadcaster. Thank you, Chris. As always, a pleasure to have you on.
That's right. And everybody out there, get your merch, get your manscaping tools. It's big time over here. Alex, appreciate you, my man.
As always, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. And this episode of Sideline Sports Podcast was brought to you by Manscaped. Just like Chris said, who is the best in mid below the waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. Let's get that number up, folks. They have an exclusive offer for you guys. 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code Sideline20 at manscaped.com. So make sure to use the promo code to save you guys 20% off along with free shipping to go ahead and get yourself a package like this with the travel bag like we talked about before with the Lawnmower 3.0. So make sure to get you guys one of these. It's solid. It's great. I've used it already and it's A1 quality. If you guys want A1 quality, this is the place to go. But I'm Alex Naveja from Sideline Sports Podcast, signing off from this one. Thank you so much for tuning in to this one. Next week, we'll start talking about some Lakers or even some Clippers. What's going down with both teams? Have a good one, everybody. Enjoy the All-Star game. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast.